The penalty thing was a huge factor. On offense, we had the 2 turnovers. Obviously, the 1 turnover, the second turnover, came after the 2 men in motion penalty on Carlos Wiggins when he scored the touchdown. 2 turnovers, and then we dropped 2 balls at the end of the first half that just kind of left you kind of deflated a little bit. So on defense, obviously 3 balls were thrown over our head. The first third down of the game was just a dagger. No excuse. In Cranston's defense, we've practiced it so many times. You guys have watched us practice. We jumped off sides, probably got back in the neutral zone, but they throw the flag. Cranston gets just a little distracted right there. Kid beats him off the line of scrimmage, number 88, and the next thing you know, it's a 70-yard touchdown on 3rd and 5, first 3rd and 5 of the game. Ball got thrown over our head. We didn't fit the runs properly when we got a little tired and things got a little out of kilter with the up tempo. That hurt us. And then there was a few times we didn't get lined up. They were going really, really fast. The positive is we hung in there and forced them to field goals. I thought we played with a lot of heart, but not nearly good enough. Kicking game, we missed a 42-yard field goal. With all that said, it's 23-21 with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. We're moving the ball. We end up missing a 42-yard field goal dead in the middle of the field, no wind, no rush, good protection. So a frustrating night, not a demoralizing night. I think, what you do is the first thing you just look around this conference. Every other team but Air Force is faced with the same thing today. Every team in this conference, the 3 even that we don't play, are faced with it. They're all coming off losses. So it's going on all over the country in college football. I do think we can continue to get better. I think the best is ahead of us. But right now, that's talk. We have to go do it. I thought we would play better. We didn't. So it's full-on Arizona State. It's full-on correcting things and narrowing the focus and just trying to get better. And I think we have the opportunity to get better. So in some ways, I'm encouraged that there was some potential that shows we can be really good. At the same time, we've got some liabilities. We know a lot more about where we are, just like I said last week at this conference. We'll know a lot more today than we knew last week at this time, coming off that 66-0 game. So that's where we are, right? Got to go coach, got to get better. A lot of football left. We're like a lot of other teams, particularly in this conference. We've got enough weapons to win, but we don't have a lot of margin for error, and that's what it is. That's what you like about it. Rick, I know you've been waiting there patiently.
Why were the changes in the O-line made, and what are you thinking about doing for
Simple reasons. Getting ready for Tulsa, we knew 99. I think he was a 50-year senior in there, strong. And we knew number 8 would be a handful for us over the guards. Tavita Fanua played pretty good against Mississippi Valley. Didn't play very well early in practice. Was just, for whatever reason, went backwards. So we moved Aaron Jenkins into guard along with Oldenkamp. Thought they could give us our best punch inside. Also, if you noticed in the game how deep Tulsa played that middle backer, he was really deep. And we really needed to come down as a tackle and keep that middle linebacker from running in the alley on our outside plays. So we thought Adcock was athletic enough, even though he's not very big, to do that. So it was a combination, really, first of all, of Tulsa and how we knew they would probably play us with the 2-2 techniques over the guards. We knew we had to try to get down on that middle backer with that tackle. Reno's athletic. We needed another one to do it. And the third thing was that Tavita Fanua didn't respond very well. He played okay in the game against Mississippi Valley, but he didn't really practice very well. Moving ahead, just as I said too early on, our offensive line is a work in progress. Chris Lewis played 4 plays. He will play more plays in this game. Aaron Jenkins didn't play very well at guard. We probably need to get him back to tackle. Romine did come in and play 45 plays, I think it was. So we're still a work in progress, even though we have a few more players. And I think that probably parallels our team and parallels our defense. You know, we have a few more players, but we don't have anybody that's just emerged that you say, boy, that guy right there is really going to make a difference on our offense or defense. We have a few more, and we've got to develop and we've got to get better. So I think our offensive line is just like our team. We have a few more numbers, but we don't have anybody that's just that dynamic or that good right now that's going to make a difference just yet. Kind of look like we did last year. You know, if I look at the Tulsa game, if I'm you, I'm saying they kind of look like they looked last year. Maybe a few more weapons, maybe a little more attacking on defense, but bottom line, it looks like it did last year. But I think we have a chance. In fact, I know we have a chance to get a little bit better as we go.
So, Coach, that consistency on the O-line, that's what you're just looking for that?
Yeah, we don't have it right now. There's really no consistency on the offensive line. Again, it's well documented. Johnny Visciana, we kind of had our fingers crossed. Toye, we had more than our fingers crossed. We were all over that. We had spent a spring and a whole summer with a 315-pound center that we thought was going to be a big advantage. All of a sudden, that rug's pulled, and we had to go to plan B much quicker than we thought. And that meant moving some defensive guys over there. I think we're going to be okay. I really do. I really do. Once we get into the conference season, I think we have a chance to be okay. But right now, we're a little wobbly, no question.
So, Coach, I watched the Cal Poly game the
Yeah.
other night, and they were able to run the dive pretty effectively
Yeah.
in the first half. So how do you compare yourself with their line going up against Arizona State?
I
Do you
don't-
see much difference?
Yeah, I don't think it's the line. I think if you look at Cal Poly, as I know you did, one of the advantages of being under center in the true triple option with the fullback up there tight to the line of scrimmage, that fullback's on top of you right now. He's on top of you. So Arizona State's a stunting, moving, blitzing defense. So if you just hand that ball to the fullback, you got a chance to crease him up in there a lot. We're a little different. You know, we're back there in the pistol. We hand the ball to the back. He has more cutback opportunities, but it takes a little longer to get there. So it wasn't so much the offensive line. Their techniques are a little bit different. Their style's a little bit different. We're both triple option at the core, but there's not a whole lot of similarities between us and Cal Poly. In fact, Arizona State's tended to play, or Todd Graham's tended to play that true double slot different than how he played us last year. So it's two really different offenses. But I was impressed with Cal Poly on both sides of the football, though.
Kind of with that said, Coach, does that make for a favorable matchup for the Lobos? I mean, that game was tied in the second half.
You know, I don't know. You know, I look at Arizona State similar to us in that they beat a team they should have beat, and they lost to a team that's about like them. Now, maybe A&M's a little better, maybe Tulsa's a little better than us, but very similar. I know what Arizona State's capable of. I'm really more concerned right now about us. I know that's an old coaching cliche, but it really is true because we're like a lot of other teams in the country that what happened Saturday doesn't mean as much as how we respond to what happened on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We have a chance, and that's what I'm most concerned about.
You touched on it kind of a little bit at the beginning, playing a Friday game, and I know it's only 1 day difference, but what kind of challenges do you face, going into an opponent like ASU and playing a Friday game? What challenges do you face?
I think players are a lot more resilient than you think, and I think, for instance, we went out there last night and practiced. We practiced this morning already. We've already had 2 practices since the game. Sometimes I think it's a good thing. As coaches, we were in at 7 a.m. on Sunday and stayed up here last night till 11 o'clock. We were back in here at 6 o'clock this morning. I just think this is what you do. You go on to the next game. And to be quite honest, our preparation really is done for a Saturday game. Thursday, our physical preparation about Thursday at about noon. And then on Fridays, we don't even go on the field on Fridays. So basically, we can get all our preparation in by Friday at noon for that 8 o'clock our time game. So I really don't think when it's time to go out there and kick the ball off, it's going to make much difference. It definitely impacts the coaches and the players, and I think particularly coming off a loss, because you're in there the very next morning at 7 o'clock and you're digging through that night before game, and you've got to get through that, grade that, correct that, show the players, and move on to the next game. So it takes some mental toughness, but that's what this is all about.
having been able to see the tape, what about tackling? Do you feel like the Lobos tackle better?
A little better. You know, we had 14 missed tackles, which would they snap the ball 90 times in the game. I thought it was a little bit better. Most of the problems came from, again, a little bit late getting lined up, which comes playing against those offenses. You know, I think if Tulsa stays healthy, I'd go out on a limb and make a statement they'll be in the top 10, maybe the top 5 in offense when the season's over. I saw that going in. I think they do a heck of a job. I think they've got some really big-time weapons on that team. I think they're a top 5 to 10 offensive football team in this country.
What did you see out of Gambo? I mean, he looked like kind of one of those guys that you mentioned that maybe there's a few more playmakers. He looks like one of those guys.
I agree 100%. I told him in training camp, I said, I like you a lot more in 2 than I like you in 28. You know, he wore 28 last year. And he looks like a different player. I think the key with Gambo is to keep him healthy and as strong as he can be. He's not the biggest guy. He gets beaten down. He gets worn down. He touched the ball a lot of times the other night. But no question, his best football game since he's been here. Interesting, he's really good friends with number 2 from Tulsa, the kid that I think is an outstanding. I think he's an NFL receiver, the kid that made the one catch in the end zone down here. He's good friends with him. He also went to the same high school as Rashad Higgins from Colorado State. And I know Gambo's been a bit frustrated. You know, we haven't been able to take the shackles off and let him do some things. It's the first time we've really let him get involved because we have a little more offense.
Is he just a lot more comfortable in the slot?
I think so. I think he's a better player in the slot because you can't get up there and jam him. As I said, he's not the biggest, strongest guy. The slot, it's really hard to get up and press because he's off the ball. He motions. And he's a good enough player that he can catch the pitch and make some guys miss. Again, if he stays strong, gets stronger, and stays healthy, I think he can have a good year for us.
How big was it to get Terrion back?
Big. You know, Terrion, particularly because it was a pitch the ball on the perimeter game. It really came down to that. Not that we love that, but they forced us to do it. And Terrion is a guy that can catch the pitch and go. Probably does that a little better than Jarrell. Jarrell's the player that we need to get going. You know, we've got to get the dives going. We've got to get the powers going, get him the football more. It just turns into, when it's a pitch game, Gip's pretty good at just catching the ball out there in space. He's just a little bit better at that. Not that we don't do it to Jarrell.
On that first long pass that they caught, it looked like somebody ran a wrong route because they had 2 guys right together. Was there any confusion between Cranston and Daniel?
There was just a little chaos because if you notice, Garrett, Hughes, and Donnie jumped. And then they both jumped back, and the official threw the flag right there in front. They had 2 receivers right there. We had 2 DBs. And the official threw the flag right there. And it was like for a second the play was stopped, like it was stopped, but it wasn't. So Cranston was just delayed, and I think their receiver was confused. There was just a lot of confusion. And next thing you know, both those guys are behind our 2 defenders, and it's a 70-yard touchdown pass. It was just a shame. It was a shame.
Coach, defensively, what do you think you guys need to work on to?
Everything. We really do. We're everything. It's not much different than it was when I was standing up here late last season, other than we have a few more athletes. I think we have a little more depth, but almost the same thing. You know, I can't stand here and tell you that there were a lot of just positives coming out of that game, other than we did pressure the quarterback, we did have a few more explosive plays, and we hung in there and held them to field goals under some very difficult conditions. Thought we were a little bit better, but if I'm standing here, you guys evaluating it, or our fans, I'd have a hard time saying we were. But I see some positives in there.
Is beating Arizona State kind of one of those games where it could be a marquee win or a turning point where you kind of turn the corner when fans look at it, seeing a big name rather than just beating a mountain?
I mean, I think that's obvious, right? You know, the intangible things you gain from something very tangible, going over there and beating them. I think it's important we still are what we are. We still are who we are. We're still a team that's fighting to get to a bowl game, fighting to win more than we lose. But definitely that would be huge for us from a confidence standpoint, from an energy standpoint. I think we're all looking for the same thing. You know, what's it going to do for Toledo that went and beaten Arkansas? I don't know when all the dust settles what it's going to do, but it damn sure feels better this week around Toledo. I promise you that. So I'm looking at this game and then what it does for me next Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I'd be a happy man. I'd be a happy man.
Coach, when you're in the media like you were, they ask you predictions and things like that, and Vegas has this at 28 points.
Yeah.
How does that have any impact on your kids that they live in a world where they hear all that stuff, right? Or do they just?
I think that's a good question for them. I really mean that. I've never, first of all, I think I've told you guys this before. That's the thing I hated most. Or I won't say hated most. The only thing that I disliked, about doing the college football analysis thing was sitting there trying to make predictions on things that honestly I didn't know everything about. And honestly didn't really care that much and wasn't that motivated to give an opinion on. And you're almost forced to give a little opinion on something. And I hate that. I hate to just say things for either effect or say things that I don't really know everything about. So I've never paid any attention to that absolutely at all. So I think that's something good to ask our players. I don't think they'd have any idea. At least I hope they wouldn't. I hope they don't have any idea what it is. You can't tell me, honestly, as I stand here, if we were either favored or the underdog against Tulsa. I looked at it like we were the underdog, truthfully, going in, because I looked at those wide receivers and the quarterback and 10 players back on offense. In my gut, I knew we were the underdog going into that game. So I don't think it affects them. I think you'd have to ask them, but it's not something I ever talk about.
So, Coach, you know, it's been over 50-some years since we won in Tempe. I think it goes back to 1948 or 49. Of course, I started watching Lobos football in 1960.
Yeah.
We've never won in Tempe. It had to be one of the biggest victories in our school history
Sure.
to go in there and beat them. Don't you think that's something to motivate somebody? I would be crazy to get ready to play.
Yeah, I think it is, you know, and I know a lot about Arizona State. You know, I coached at Arizona. My son went to Arizona State, played. My daughter got her law degree from Arizona State. We've got a home in Scottsdale. I would probably temper that a little bit with what Arizona State was back in what year that was.
I think it was. I have to go back 1948, 49. I mean, I don't think we ever beat them on the road.
Yeah.
It's been long before my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona State's come a long way since that year. Just get around that campus a little bit, look at those facilities, look at what Arizona State's become enrollment-wise, commitment-wise. Look at the size of their coaching staff now. They've come a long way. Hopefully we have come a ways in these last 3 years. But yeah, it goes without saying. You already wrote the story, man. You asked the question and answered it right there. It's big, yeah.
In terms of tempo, last year ASU wasn't quite in Mexico State. Are they not quite Tulsa?
I think that's a great question. I think that's a great point. They are totally capable of being Tulsa. They choose when they want to and when they don't. To me, what I respect about them so much is they want to get things blocked right. They want to get things executed right, and they'll slow it down a little bit, and they'll change the play to get the right play against the right defense. They have the tempo. They can totally go tempo and turn it into just a foot race like that. To me, they're a little more wanting to line up and beat the heck out of you and block you and execute instead of just totally out-condition you. Now, they'll do that, but a little less compared to Tulsa. Now, they may go do it every snap in the game, and we're preparing like they will. But I think their nature is a little more execution. And I actually kind of like that from the standpoint of just for this game a little more for football, as you've heard me talk a lot about.
Coach, don't you think they'll probably be like on alert status as far as you guys scared them last year? You know, they probably thought they were going to just walk in here.
I think they're always on alert status. I think everybody in college football is every week. There's just so much invested. And, you know, again, last week I stood up there and gave all those examples about not taking a win for granted. I could probably do the same thing again this week. I don't think anybody thought Jacksonville State would go into overtime with Auburn last week. So definitely there's a chance to go win this game. There's definitely a chance for us to go win this game.
At corner, is it a little bit like offensive line, still searching to find those guys that can cover and who's going to?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, our secondary is that way. There's a few more pieces, but nobody's emerged yet enough to say, okay, their secondary's better. So hopefully we're healthy enough and somebody emerges.
Injuries at all?
I'm going to do what Tulsa did. Right? They just said that the depth chart was exactly the same as it was the week before. Right, Rick? That's what they did. That's what they said, right? It's exactly the same as it was the week before. They'll be saying that November 26th, exactly the same as it was the week before. Isn't that what they do in college football now?
And Belichick.
That's what we do, right? Just like if I stand and say it's a pivotal game, Coach, you lost a pivotal game. So you probably shouldn't say it's a pivotal game, right? Right? Or that you just be honest and say what you think and be honest about it. Right, man? All right, guys.